Hey, how's it
Hey,
going?
Stuart. I'm
Hi.
good. How are you?
Good, thanks. Um, so thanks for taking your time to do another one of these talks. Um, this one is going to be about female hormones, or what is it exactly that you want to discuss?
Yeah, let's talk about women that are in their reproductive years.
Cool.
As when you get into puberty, your hormones change. And
Yeah.
then a woman in particular has a very complex hormonal situation
I mean,
having to do with,
I'd say a lot of my friends that I've grown up around with, like, they have major complications when it comes to period pain and just like um, really a lot of discomfort. Yeah. Is that normal?
if you're sick, if
So
you're healthy, no. Like
interesting.
if you're healthy and you have menopause, you have no symptoms with menopause.
Interesting.
So if a woman has menopausal symptoms, means that she's unhealthy.
So you mean
And
gut health, like just overall health in general effects?
there's dozens of influences on your health, as you know.
Are
And
women
and
like more susceptible because these hormones are more sensitive? Does that make sense? Like women's
yeah,
bodies are like way more sensitive because they're able to
if you're going
bear
to have a
children.
baby, guess what? There's a demand that you be healthy.
Yeah.
And if you're can't have a baby, and you're infertile, it means you're unhealthy.
So
And so doctors that specialize in that, they don't consider that the reason why a woman can't get pregnant is because she's unhealthy. And doctors don't like to tell people that they have a responsibility for their health. So if you
yeah,
have cancer, you don't talk about the cause of the cancer.
yeah.
If you have mental illness, you don't talk about the cause. The medical profession gives you a drug or gives you a treatment, but they never talk about how your lifestyle and your choices are the primary reason for your high blood pressure, your diabetes, your arthritis, your atherosclerosis and heart disease, your kidney disease, your mental illness.
So what are yeah, what can you tell me about like reproductive hormones? Like some really interesting information.
Well, hormones are messengers.
Uh-huh.
And if the messenger is not carrying the message, it's not the messenger's fault. So if you have adrenal problems, it's because of other issues. If you have progesterone, estrogen, testosterone problems, if you have thyroid problems, that's not what you focus on.
Yeah.
It's like the messenger has a web of connections that it's messaging. It's taking a message from one area of the body to another area.
Hmm.
There are hormones that go to every cell in your body. That's primarily cortisol made by your adrenals.
Hmm.
But then you've got reproductive hormones that go to your reproductive organs and glands.
Hmm.
You've got a thyroid hormone that sets your metabolism. Is very very specific to certain tissues. Then you even have cellular hormones, where a hormone is made at a cellular level and it connects to the cells around it. So there's lots of different types of hormones, and there's different kinds of functions of hormones. But one of the exciting things when I was working in the cancer clinics with breast cancer and prostate cancer, which were quite prevalent and quite horrific, these were hormonally driven cancers. And
Interesting.
I would ask the doctors, well, tell me more. And they didn't really know much.
Because they're treating the symptom, they're treating the disease rather than the root of the disease, which is an
Yeah.
imbalance or a lack of foundational support, or what is it that people are doing wrong that would cause their hormones to be so imbalanced and not functioning correctly.
Not forgiving others, not forgiving themselves, having judgments about, other people and themselves, making poor choices in diet. You and I sent you that article, and you said that Trevor had referenced it as well, that the U.S. military now rejects 7 out of 10 people.
70%, yeah.
Now, when I was a kid, when Vietnam was happening, they weren't rejecting nobody.
Yeah, you had to make up some.
We had to have bone spurs or something like that, to get out of it.
Isn't that wild that in a
And
few generations, our food system has changed so drastically that now most Americans are just sick, just overweight, sick, low energy. I mean, just in a few generations.
inflamed,
Yeah.
degenerative diseases,
And people aren't even
mental,
people aren't really even talking about it. Like the food.
well,
I mean,
doctors
they
don't.
are. But I mean, even
Doc-
like it should be just common knowledge, like very simple to see. It's like, oh yeah, we're eating poison and our bodies are not functioning correctly. But there's still people that I talk with that are like, oh, but this person, they live till they're 90 and they're fine and they drink alcohol and smoke cigarettes. And it's like, oh my God, like, okay, like, do you not understand that nobody is immune to like eating poison? Like some people can, like, their constitution is different and they seem to be like they can handle it, but nobody's immune. There's things that are happening that you can't see. But yeah,
well, I know people that say my friends do this and they're okay. Well, I've looked at their friends
yeah,
and they're not okay.
yeah. I mean, like,
So when
it,
you're in your 20s and your 30s, you can fake it.
yeah,
But people are already used to being sick in their 20s and 30s.
yeah. I mean, it starts
And
off when
so
you're 4, like you start getting fevers, and I mean, even when you're like really young, they start feeding these kids like cookies.
colic,
Yeah, I
breast
mean,
milk.
I mean,
The babies have colic and they're drinking nothing but breast milk, but it's the mother that has the reactions to the foods, and then they
yeah,
pass on that reaction to the baby. And that colic, unfortunately, stays with the kid, and so the childhood illnesses don't go away. They
well, yeah,
we get used to those childhood illnesses, and they
right.
grow worse and worse and worse.
Right. And so
So
most people will say, oh, I'm fine. I'm healthy. I have no health issues. And it's like, well, you're just like used to feeling the way you are. Like the same,
people,
like, that was the case for me. Is like, I was 20 years old. I thought I was healthy. And then in a few months time, I got to feel what it really felt like to be healthy. And I was like, oh my God. And so I'm sympathetic to people who just, and you don't want to like wreck people's world necessarily. And whenever I talk about health stuff with people, I go, look, like, you've been sick your whole life. And when you do this, you're going to unmask everything. And so, and look, it took your body your whole lifetime to just be okay with the treatment that you're treating it. Like, you are sick. You don't know it because your body's like compensating a lot for you. But when you do start treating yourself really well, your body's not going to let you go back to treating it like shit. So this is like when you decide to purify yourself, like, you can't go back unless you want to experience all those symptoms again, of just clogged ears and nose and rashes and headaches and constipation and diarrhea and fevers and colds, like back to back to back to back, like most every kid had. It's not because it was going around. It's because you were susceptible to it. So I always, because I don't want people to do this for a few months and then lose steam and then like pay for the consequences. Like, if you're not going to do it, just don't do it, because like it's actually worse. And I know this because I experienced it. And there's times where like I wish I could go back and just eat Fruity Pebbles and just like drink his bowl of cereal or whatever. Like, I kind of sometimes wish, because it takes a lot of energy, a lot of focus, it takes consistency to stay on top of your game. And for a lot of people, like, they've never been disciplined in anything in their life. So to ask them to do something as hard as change their diet, like, I understand. However, like, it kind of goes hand in hand. Maybe you don't have energy now, and so you don't feel like you can do it. But once you start feeling better, you're gonna have the energy to keep going. It's like you get to like unlock this level of yourself that you never had before. So it all kind of makes sense. But I give that like fair warning in the beginning. Like, look, you maybe like there's no going back. Like you're gonna get better. You're gonna feel better. You're gonna feel the best you've ever had in your life. But if you try and revert back to eating cake and buying quick cookies and eating at a restaurant without asking any questions, you're going to pay for it really bad. So I think that should be like a good warning on the label.
Well, as a clinician
Yeah.
who dealt with hundreds of people over decades, I'd say the majority of people that get well revert back.
Yeah.
The majority of them.
Yeah.
And I certainly don't get it. But then, I'm different. There aren't a lot of people who are 70 who feel great, who have, good energy, aren't sick, aren't taking drugs, don't drink, enjoy reading and studying and learning, have a clear head, are excited about learning more. And so there's not a whole lot of people that I can relate to, quite frankly. And one of my biggest disappointments and frustrations in the last 10 years has been seeing people get well and then watching them fall off the track again. And I'm curious also as to how so many of the people that I've helped, they just they lose contact. And so I'd say that is the majority of the people that I do help. And I ask why. And it's usually a spouse, social, workers,
Yeah.
kids, the advertisements, the social network, the restaurants, the advertisements, the dominant, belief that you can go to an MD and take a toxic drug that will make you feel better, but the MD will never even address why don't you feel good in the first place. And they don't, so what I've learned is that, our health is a matter of choices. And that if you make the right choices, even if you have destroyed your health with the wrong choices, if you make the right choices consistently, the grace, and the healing capacity of the body is pretty much unprecedented, and you can get well. But so few people, even after they've learned the basics, and I spend a lot of time with my clients teaching them stuff, I'm sorely disappointed. So 2 years ago, I set out to really kind of say, okay, what I'm not doing is that I'm not helping them learn how to think. And a big part of that has to do with learning how to forgive themselves. I'm not good enough. I'm incapable. I'm not smart enough. I'm too fat. I'm too this, or I'm too that. So I set out to really study, metaphysics and, psychology, philosophy, spirituality, to really address, that aspect of what drives us to make the choices that we make. But so I've learned a lot, and that's where I have confidence in working with people that are really, really sick. But unless those people can really get in there and grapple with the psychological blueprint of how they live their life, if that's not changed, then they're not going to make the physical changes that's necessary to be healthy. And I'll tell you, it's a fractal. Look at our world, Stuart.
Yeah.
The fact that 70% of children of 18-year-olds are not fit to be in the military, it's you know, but look at the number of animals that are dying, the extinction rates, they're alarming. Insects, mammals, vertebrates, invertebrates, fishes, you
Yeah.
know,
So we got to clean up our act big time. And if we don't, then it's game over.
yeah.
So
So we're, you know, as a culture, as a world, we're making really, really poor choices.
yeah, and everything
And
kind of bounces off of one another and like your influence, whether or not you want to be or, so yeah, what we're seeing at the top is what's happening on the bottom. Everything's kind of connected. So how does this like pertain to like female hormones, specifically? Like what kind of
well,
cool insights can you give?
so when I wanted to learn about hormones, I went to a hormone lab and I was hired to be a consultant there. And for 2 years, I reviewed bioidentical hormone testing, where we looked at salivary samples of cortisol and did adrenal tests. And it turns out that adrenals make the DHEA that the ovary and the testes use to make estrogen, testosterone, and progesterone. And so the adrenal testing was revealing, because it turns out that if you have reproductive hormone problems with estrogen or progesterone or testosterone, you have an adrenal problem. And it turns out that the adrenal problem has to do with how you think, it has to do with blood sugar control, and it has to do with chronic inflammation, because cortisol is used to fight inflammation. And inflammation now has been determined to be the major cause of all the degenerative diseases. So what are the different reasons why the body gets inflamed? Well, the two primary reasons are because of an invasion of an infection, a bug, or a reaction to a food. We lose our tolerance to a food and we start to react to our foods, and it's inflammatory. Either it's an allergy, which is a histamine reaction, so that, you know, a food allergy is a problem that causes inflammation in the neck and the head. Anaphylactic shock, peanuts, you know, seafood, you know, different allergies, dust mites, asthma. Asthma is going through the roof these days. You know, the problems with childhood asthma, and this has to do with pollution. So either a food, a bug, or a toxin is the cause of all of our diseases. A food, a bug, or a toxin. And those are called antigens. And an antigen is a foreign protein that stimulates an immune response, an antibody production. So the first guy that I worked with hormones said that on his tombstone, he wanted it to be said that he did antigen load reduction therapy. And that really is the key.
Mm.
You know, when we get penetrated, when we get invaded by a foreigner, our body responds to it, and it results in an inflammatory response if it's an overwhelming invasion. It's called the complement cascade. And an antibody is produced against the invader. It locks it up, and it's supposed to be eliminated out through the kidneys and out through the urine.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's too many invaders coming in, and those antibodies with their foreigner recirculate around the body, then the white blood cells, the other part of our immune system, sees that as a toxin. And there's an intercellular hormone called complement. And that complement causes the white blood cells to attack the invading food, bug, or toxin that's been locked up with an antibody. And that causes the complement cascade. And that's the genesis, that's the pathogenesis of disease. So when it comes to hormones, it turns out that, again, if you have a reproductive hormone problem, you've got an adrenal problem. If you've got an adrenal problem, that's oftentimes the precursor to a thyroid problem. And so, you know, what's really interesting is you can't just treat a hormonal problem. You also can't just treat an infection. You also, if you have a yeast infection, or if you have a coronavirus infection, or you have a bacterial infection, these chronic infections have a root cause, and it has to do with oftentimes foods and toxins. The other thing in reproductive hormones, there was just a report done on pesticides and the toxins that are in our households. We talked last time about carpet. Well, it turns out that the flame retardants in our upholstery and in our clothes,
Hmm.
and the toxins that are found in just everyday cleaning in our house, and then the toxins that are associated with foods and pesticides. This is a huge problem for reproductive hormones, both in the insects, the amphibians, the mammals. We're poisoning ourselves, and the effects are dramatic. And so when it comes to, if you have a hormonal problem, what I learned to do was salivary testing, which looked, instead of the hormone that's floating around in the blood, it's what passes through the cell membrane is actually physiologically active at the cellular level. That was very a new science that was developed starting around 2000. And at the time, doctors would call up and say, well, I'm doing blood testing for hormones. Is saliva testing reliable? And the fact is that in order for that salivary testing to be legal and approved by the Food and Drug Administration, it had to be shown to correlate with a serum test, is your blood. So if you had, in order to get that testing approved and made available to physicians, you had to show that the salivary testing reflected the same information as the serum testing. The important thing with the salivary testing was that you didn't have to draw blood. So you could test, 10 times a day with saliva, and it was non-invasive, versus you couldn't poke somebody 10 times a day. And also, it was, instead of what's in the blood, it had to pass a membrane to be made into saliva. And so what's in the saliva was reflective of what's active at the cellular level, not just what's floating around in the blood. So I worked there for a couple of years. And then I, of course, learned immunology, and I learned about foods and bugs and toxins, and learned about fatty acid in the cell membrane, and learned about neurotransmitters and amino acids, learned about all the different parasites and bacteria and fungus and viruses and how that affects your immune system. But then about two years ago, maybe 3 years ago, I was listening to a podcast, and it had to do with a new assessment of hormones that looked at the metabolites. So hormones are produced, then they have to get to the cell to actively work. But then those hormones are broken down primarily by the liver. So a reproductive hormone has a half-life of about 3 days. So our hormones float around, like I said, some go to every cell in your body, some are very specific to certain tissues, but reproductive hormones are broken down about every 3 days. And so looking at the hormone in the urine turns out to be very, very helpful. And when I was first listening to this, I'll never forget the day. I'm living over in Garner Valley, and I'm listening to this podcast about this new way of looking at hormones. And I'm going, wait a minute, that's different from what I've been studying and teaching for 20 years. But the more I listened to it, I went, oh my gosh, what I thought turns out not to be exactly accurate. And instead of, so oftentimes when we're presented with new ideas or a new way of looking at something, we resist.
Yeah.
And we want to hold on to our old thoughts and our own ways. And it was really interesting after, by the end of this lecture, I was going, I need to know more about that. And so I called up the lab. It's called Precision Analytical, and it's called the Dutch test, and that's dried urine test for hormones. And so I talked with the doctor there. I talked with the lab director. I started doing those tests. And that was a few years ago. I did maybe a dozen or two, couple dozen of those tests. And I was kind of to the point where I was thinking, well, this is information that's valuable, but like I said, if you have a hormone problem, it's not just the hormone. You can't do hormone replacement therapy and fix it. There's all these other issues that need to be addressed. And they by looking at the metabolism of the hormone, they saw that the level of the hormone has to do with what you're producing. It has to do with what's driving the production, either an overproduction or an insufficient amount of production by the gland. But what's actually in the blood and what's at the cellular level is also influenced by how it's broken down. So the urine, which looks at the body has used the hormone and has broken it down, and then it passes it into the urine. The liver is primarily responsible for breaking down the hormone, and then it passes into the urine. So that tells you a whole lot of information, because it's not just what's produced. The level that you're measuring also has to do with how much is broken down. So if your liver's not doing a good job of breaking it down, then your hormone levels could be high, even though the production of the hormone wasn't too high. Because the liver's not breaking it down and you're not getting it out of your body, you might have an estrogen dominance.
So that kind of showcases the danger of just giving hormone replacement therapy.
Oh boy,
Yeah,
for sure. And even if you find and do a really comprehensive job of looking at the hormone levels, if your hormone levels are low, there's still a pretty good argument that using hormone replacement therapy is still, even if it is a low hormone and it's indicated, there are other ways to stimulate your own body's production of the hormone. So hormone replacement therapy is not the first choice. Sometimes it has to be done, but in the last 20 years, so much information has come out about different herbs and organic acids and vitamins and minerals and dietary and lifestyle changes that are arguably more important and allow your body's normalization so that your body can start producing the hormones on its own, versus when you take a hormone, it shuts down because of the forward feedback back loop of hormones. If you're taking a synthetic hormone, your body thinks that it has enough, so it will shut down your own production.
What is a hormone? Like what is the?
It's a protein, and it's made by a gland. It's actually made in the mitochondria. A lot of the hormones are made in the mitochondria, which is sort of like the cellular powerhouse. It's an intercell. In every cell has a mitochondria. It's where energy is produced. So ATP, adenosine triphosphate, is the primary fuel of all the cells, and that's made from glucose. It's called the Krebs cycle. And this has to do with a big subject that has been talked about a lot in the last 5 years called methylation. And so if people have, and then they look at their genetics and they say, oh, I've got, a gene that's causing me not to, do methylation properly. And this Dutch test, it does an adrenal test with saliva, and it specifically looks at your awakening response. So the cortisol awakening response, called the CAR. And cortisol, produced by the adrenals, is part of a circadian cycle. It's a 24-hour production. And cortisol is highest in the morning, and it's lowest about between 2 and 4 a.m. And so, whereas, then there's melatonin, the sleep hormone, which is highest at 2 or 4 p.m. and should be lowest in the morning. So there are people that can't wake up in the morning. And this is oftentimes a phasic shift. You look at these 24-hour cycles. Like a woman has a period, a menses, which is usually a 26 to 28-day cycle. It can be a variance on that. But that's a monthly cycle. Then we have daily cycles, which are called circadian rhythms. And the adrenals are highest in the morning, and then they progressively get lower and lower and lower. And it has a lot to do with the sun, as does melatonin.
The sun and the
so,
moon. Yeah.
So 3 hours after the sun goes down, cortisol levels really drop. And so what they've done, they do the salivary testing, and they measure, when you first wake up, you do a measurement you do some saliva, and it measures your cortisol production. Then you measure it 30 minutes later, and then you measure it another 30 minutes after that. So you do 3 measurements within that first hour of awakening. And this really tells you a lot. So when you wake up, you should ideally be alert and really ready to roar 20 minutes after you wake up, if not as soon as you wake up. And if you can't wake up without a couple cups of coffee and tea, and you finally get your mojo about noon, that's a real sign of adrenal stress.
Adrenal exhaustion.
And adrenal stress has to do with blood sugar control.
Mm-hmm.
So by measuring that first response of cortisol, it tells you if you're overstressed, if you've got blood sugar problems, it tells you if you've got a chronic infection, it tells you if you're developing autoimmune. It's very revelatory as to what's going on with your lifestyle and your diet. So they measure that. Then they measure through the urine the estrogen, testosterone, and progesterone. And with a cycling woman, a woman who's having her period and is in her reproductive years, they'll measure that throughout the month. So the way that a woman's cycle works is that when a woman has her period, that means that her estrogen levels, progesterone levels are very low. And when that's the case, your body produces this hormone, which causes the follicle, which is in the ovary, to start to produce estrogen. And so the first 10 to 14 days is called the follicular phase, the follicle. And there's a hormone produced by the pituitary, which causes the follicle to develop. Estrogen is produced. And as estrogen is produced, the body selects one egg. So out of all of the eggs that are in the ovary, one gets chosen to start producing, to be able to produce a baby. And that estrogen levels then start to rise. And you can tell when you ovulate because your estrogen levels are high, they're at a peak, and your follicle stimulating hormone is it's actually highest around day 2 or 3 of the beginning of the cycle, which is after the menses. So the first day of your cycle, your estrogen levels are low, they start to rise. they cause the estrogen levels are produced in the follicle. Then once that gets high, then the corpus luteum, which is the progesterone producing tissue in the follicle, is stimulated by luteinizing hormone. And then you get this spike of progesterone after you ovulate. So basically, you start with low hormones, your estrogen levels rise, it causes ovulation. After ovulation, your corpus luteum starts to produce progesterone, which rises and then stays at a plateau for about 10 to 12 days. And then, if you don't become pregnant, then the progesterone levels drop, and the estrogen levels, which rose in the first part of the cycle, the follicular phase, they drop down during the luteal phase, not nearly as high as in the follicular phase, but they're still there. And then you get the progesterone levels, and when the progesterone levels drop, the estrogen levels drop, that signals the next menstrual cycle if you haven't gotten pregnant. If you've gotten pregnant, then the corpus luteum keeps on producing progesterone, and then the placenta grows, and that starts to produce the progesterone. But if you don't get pregnant, then the cycle stops, or goes back to where you have a menstrual bleed, and then you start that whole monthly cycle over again. So in the old days, they would measure the blood and they would see what the estrogen levels are in the follicular phase.
Mm-hmm.
They would take the day in the luteal phase and draw some blood. But you see the estrogen levels rise up, cause ovulation. Then after ovulation, the progesterone levels rise up. And so, but the problem with a menstrual cycle is in the details of that. And so you can have your estrogen levels cannot rise up and cause the ovulation correctly. And then in the luteal phase, the progesterone levels, instead of rising up rapidly after ovulation and staying at a plateau, they can drop off prematurely. And then you can also get estrogen levels that start bouncing around, and you can get, the estrogen levels will go up in the latter part of the cycle. So it's like doing a video versus a photograph. If you do a video, you get the whole action. If you take a snapshot, you might see, progesterone levels were fine for the luteal phase, estrogen levels were fine in the follicular phase, but actually there were days when that was really a huge variant. And that's where you start to see the problems with PMS, with excessive bleeding, with infertility, with a cycle that is not your regular cycle, with inability to get pregnant or inability to stay pregnant. So there's migraine headaches, all the PMS symptoms. So you measure, that's called a cycle mapping. So you measure those, you do the adrenal response, and you really look at that early morning response. And then you look at the whole, adrenal cycle, the 24-hour rhythm. Then you do the monthly cycle for the estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. And then you're looking at the metabolites of those reproductive hormones by the liver. And there's three kind of pathways, and there's two different phases of liver detoxification. And so sometimes you can have the estrogen metabolized ideally. Sometimes the estrogen is not metabolized ideally, and it's not broken down. And so the methylation, which is a big deal these days, doesn't occur. And the estrogen can be metabolized into estrogen is a growth hormone, and it can be metabolized into with oxidative stress, so that the estrogen is causing growth, and that can result in cancer. that can result in breast tissue growth. That can result in a whole lot of different problems. So by measuring not only the level of the hormone on the particular days throughout the cycle, but then also seeing how the estrogen is being metabolized, you've got a heads up that needs to be considered in addition to what the level is that you see. How is the liver functioning? And so it turns out, and then like testosterone, if testosterone is not processed correctly, it can lead to a lot of problems. And you can see that through this test. And by seeing how the testosterone is being metabolized, you can then surmise how the thyroid is working. And you can see hypothyroid. So a woman's cycle has to do with her adrenals, which has to do with infections, autoimmunity, blood sugar control, stress. It has to do with the actual level of the reproductive hormones, and then it has to do with the metabolism of those hormones, the breakdown of those. And so you've got like a couple dozen considerations there to look at, and this can help you determine if a woman has polycystic ovarian disease, which is a cyst on the ovary, problem with infertility and problem with pregnancy. And that, is a telltale sign of looking at DHEA, which this test also looks at. So, and the test also looks at some of the neurotransmitters. It looks at some of the B vitamins that, are so important in the production of these hormones. So a person that has a migraine headache, a lot of times migraines are a real problem with cycling women. And you look at that, whether or not the migraine is in the early part of the cycle, in the follicular, or if it's in the luteal phase. And then you can just determine if estrogen levels are bouncing around, and if in that luteal phase you see the estrogen levels go up and down, then if that estrogen is not being metabolized correctly, it can affect the enzyme that results in the production of serotonin, a neurotransmitter. And so you have to realize that both excessive estrogen and deficient estrogen can result in an imbalance in serotonin, which leads to a migraine. So, like, it's kind of fun. It's kind of it's a puzzle.
Yeah. So for any doctors that are listening, I'm sure they really appreciated that for sure. But for anyone who just wants to know what they can do to improve their cycle, give us some tips.
They have to go to a doctor that understands what I just said. And guess what? There ain't many.
Okay, so what are some applicable things that people can do? So people are suffering with migraines, and people are suffering with like polycystic, what is it called?
Polycystic ovarian disease.
That's really common, and a lot of people can't get pregnant because of it. And so you underlined that there's infections. I mean, essentially what you're saying is it's all about the foundation. You take care of your health, you take care of yourself daily, you do this thing that you have to do regardless.
Yeah, if you've got a chronic infection, you're in trouble.
You're talking about a gut infection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or sinusitis.
Right.
If you've got asthma.
If you have
allergies,
any kind of chronic symptoms.
If you have a yeast infection, if you have a vaginal yeast infection or a bladder infection.
So that's a sign.
Or herpes.
Yeah.
So if you're overweight.
So that's
being overweight really, really is a big stressor.
It really boils down to stress and diet.
If you're exposed to toxins, if you're eating foods which have pesticides on them, if you're around flame retardants, if you're around carpet that's toxic, if you're living in a polluted city, then that's a big problem.
How toxic are new cars?
Horribly. Yeah. If you have a stress, what's been going on in the last 5 years of your life? but see, by looking at this exquisite test, which is, there's 20 different components of this
Could
test.
you just shoot in the dark though? Could you just like, I mean, I know the testing is really cool and it's really like miraculous that we have this capability of really like pinpointing what everything is doing and when and why and understanding what it means. But like without the testing, could you just shoot in the dark and heal someone by eliminating the cause of, you know what I mean? Like,
Well, that's kind of when I worked at the hormone lab,
yeah, you saw this
after
pattern.
after a year, I saw that what we were recommending using DHEA and pregnenolone and
Mm,
ginseng and vitamin B and blah 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 blah,
yeah,
that it wasn't really
it wasn't
addressing
working.
the root
Well, was it
cause.
working or wasn't,
No, it wasn't working very good. And
yeah.
so I'd see the retests on adrenal stress, and I'd see the retests on reproductive hormones. And we saw some good results, but I realized that the root cause of all that is the choices that
Yeah.
we make in how we eat, how we think, how we exercise, and how we
I
rest.
was really hoping that this could be a discussion about something other than the foundation or the basics, but it's not. It's like how you treat yourself on a daily basis accumulates to whether or not you're going to be healthy or unhealthy. And for women, being unhealthy showcases itself as having a bad period. It's kind of like, hey, like you're not, like you're struggling, let's make some corrections.
And
Is it
and
like,
and I'm and I what I've learned from this Dutch test 2 years ago when I started using it, the
mhm.
doctors there said, really, Chuck, you should be teaching us, because I did a lot of hormone
Well,
tests,
it's, yeah.
and now 2 years later, this test is advanced.
Mm.
And the woman that I used to work with, Dr. Carrie Jones, that told me 2 years ago I should be teaching her, well, we've reversed. And she has learned so much, and this test has refined itself to such a
So,
fantastic degree.
I know what you're doing with this test. I mean, you're using it to show people like where they need to make changes in their dietary and lifestyle. Like, what are other people using this test? Like, are
Well,
they,
they're doing that, but they're
yeah.
also, there's vitamins and minerals and herbs. There's hormone replacement.
I mean,
There's the
is that
there's a
is medicinal herbs? Is that like, I know that they work, but is it like, do you really need it? Like, is it necessary to go
yeah,
to like a
yeah. If you
medicinal?
if you're not producing progesterone in your second cycle, there are herbs that you can use that help you do that. If you're not methylating, your estrogen is not being broken down, or your testosterone, if the liver is messed up, there's herbs that help your liver
But is there
produce
something
that.
more underlying that you should be doing rather than utilizing the plant medicine?
You
Or
got to eat right.
is that just a temporary kind of
See, that's where I've got
relief?
a leg up on this whole thing, is that I do the
Right.
food sensitivity testing. And I know about rotation, which most doctors are clueless about.
And you do
I
this
know
with
about blood. I
you
know
do
about blood sugar control.
you do this with
So it,
most all of your patients, right? Like there isn't like a, it's rare. I mean, I've been trying to have you meet people where they're at, but you really can't. Like you have to kind of go full bore, otherwise you're not going to get the results that you're looking for. I mean, a lot of people when they go to consult a health technician, they just kind of they do the same thing an MD does, where it's like give lip service diet, but here's all these cool pills and potions and elixirs and tinctures that I can give you that are going to alleviate all the symptoms. But it's like that's cool, but like, is it really helpful? Like, is it in the long run, is it really addressing the root cause of what's going on? And so
no, it's
that's
a
my
cover.
question is like, is it smart to utilize these medicines or, I mean, I understand the temporary, like, yes, get some relief of symptoms, but like in the long run, unless you change the reason why your body manifested this in the first place, then the symptoms are just going to persist. Like you can get a surgery, you can take a medicine, even if it's from like the herbal section at the
Take some
store.
hormones. Hormones are powerful, man. You take progesterone, you feel like
But you're
$1,000,000.
saying it messes you up even more, you know?
Yeah,
So
in the
that's what,
long run. Yeah. And so, by doing a comprehensive blood chemistry along with this,
Mm-hmm.
where you look at what's the health of the gallbladder, what's the health of the pancreas, how much digestive enzymes are we producing, how's your white blood cell count, does it show that there's a deficiency or you're fighting a bacterial or a viral, looking at your red blood cells, are you anemic, looking at your electrolytes, are you dehydrated, looking at your minerals, do you have, the deficiency of calcium or magnesium, which is real common, or iron, so a comprehensive chemistry where you're not just looking for abnormal values, but you're really looking at it to give you an idea of exactly how the body is functioning. Doing a food sensitivity test, without that, you're eating, most everybody's eating food that's making them sick, and they've gotten used to it, so they don't even know that. And the food that they crave and they eat all the time, pretty much guaranteed that that food is causing inflammation and the development of degenerative disease. Probiotics, if you show signs of a chronic viral or bacterial or parasite, and parasites are real common. So if you don't identify that, looking at the neurotransmitters, I've done testing where I look at 15 of the neurotransmitters and 50 of the amino acids that are the building block for those neurotransmitters. But see, the Dutch test is looking at dopamine and serotonin. It's looking at some of the B vitamins and some of the components of those neurotransmitters.
Mm.
So that's really cool. So with the Dutch test, with the blood chemistry, with a food sensitivity, and then also sometimes a heavy metals test to really confirm, the toxicity, because most all of us have heavy metal contamination. And there's new urine testing. It used to be hair analysis, which was not all that reliable for heavy metals. Now there's some really great tests to look at heavy metals. So look at your toxic load, look at your relationship to food, and look at your relationship to bugs, because foods, bugs, and toxins are the cause of all diseases. So you got to really know how your body is interacting with those. Look at your dietary choices, look at your blood sugar control, look at your sleep. Because if you don't sleep, if you're not getting to bed by 3 hours after the sun goes down with that circadian rhythm, if you're not sleeping soundly, then your mind is not repairing and your body is not repairing. So
I
looking
think
at
sleep and blood sugar control are like, if you do it, you feel like a superhuman. If you don't, you're just kind of operating on basic function. And I've
yeah,
noticed
you're
that when I go to bed at 9 or 9:30, like for weeks, continuously, I feel like I unlocked another level of like my capacity. And
yeah, good
I
way
find
to put it.
I crave it. Like I'm just like I want, but socially, I'm pretty social. I have a lot of friends, and we're always doing stuff, and it's really interesting and cool. And so I have a difficult time sticking to a good sleeping cycle. And then Lily, my girlfriend, I mean, she's never had a good sleeping cycle. So trying to get her to go to bed at a decent time is like quite next to
So
impossible.
2 weeks ago, I started hunting for the comet.
Yeah,
And at that time,
still
it was
haven't
up
seen
at
it.
sunrise.
Yeah,
And so I was getting up at 3:30 and 4
yeah,
and going out and taking binoculars and tripping out trying to find the comet. Well,
yeah,
I didn't find it, but I also was pooped.
yeah.
I usually get up at
It
5,
wrecks you,
but getting up at 4 really kind of screwed me up.
and then you want to take a nap at 10.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
then now the comet is, in fact,
sun,
I can see the comet from my front porch.
cool. I've still yet to
It's,
see it,
oh man,
but I've
it's,
seen plenty of photos.
I've been looking at telescopes, but I use my binoculars. I took Patty out and we saw it. But then the other night, after dark, I went out and I found it. And then I kept looking at the sky while I was driving home. And I went up to the top of the hill where I'm at, which is another 1,000 feet from where I am. And lo and behold, I couldn't see it before, but now I know how to use the Big Dipper to find it. So there it was. And then I come home and it's in my driveway. And then I go out to my porch and it's off my front porch.
That's so cool.
So, this morning I woke up at 5. And, I go out and listen to the birds and watch the squirrels and watch the light come. And I oftentimes, I like getting up at 4 while it's still dark,
Yeah.
but it does kind of mess up my sleep pattern. So now, before
I
I
think,
go to bed, I go out and look at the stars because I live in the mountains where it's dark.
yeah.
So I've been watching Saturn and Venus and Mars. Now I understand there's a couple more planets that you can see, and then I've been watching the comet.
Yeah. Neat.
So I it's past my bedtime right now,
Yeah.
but it's fun talking to you.
Yeah.
And I hope I I hope you were able to follow what
No.
I because doggone it, Stuart, I could have gotten 10 levels deeper.
No, it just doesn't even like I followed you, but like the where my brain is going is like, okay, how can I integrate this into my life? Like what kind of information can and am I absorbing where it's like, okay, this is applicable.
So see,
I
if you're going to unlock a woman's issue, if you don't know that you need to support their adrenals or their thyroid or their luteal phase or their follicular phase, if you don't see the anemia, if you don't see the blood sugar control, if you don't see the toxicity, if you don't see that they're stressed out, if you don't see that they're not going to bed and they're not sleeping well, if you don't see that they're dehydrated, being a doctor actually is complicated. You can't be stupid and be a doctor.
yeah.
You can't just give a superfood or tell them to not eat gluten or to take this antibiotic or take this hormone
Well,
or
a lot of
take
my
this
friends
herb.
know that I'm into this stuff because of you, and I talk about it in very plain, simple terms. And then I'm very like non-confrontational about it in a way, where I kind of want to know. I want them to kind of tell me what they know, and so they kind of divulge like what it is that they've learned and who they've gone to and what they've been doing. And it parrots kind of what you say is like a lot of naturopaths, a lot of holistic doctors, a lot of clinics, like they're not getting deep. They're not getting deep enough. Like they're making some gains, but they're not getting like full bore, like where they need to go in order to really heal like deeply. And people are gonna be alleviated from symptoms, and so people are like, oh, it worked. But the transformation, and this is where I'm coming from, is like, how do you be a natural human on this planet? How do you live so that your intake is not polluted, your thoughts are not polluted? Like, how do you kind of be enlightened in the modern world? It's like, how do you not be burdened by all the modern, sophisticated lifestyle? So how, because the organism of our body is the same as it was 1,000 years ago or 100,000 years ago. Like the requirements are the same. The environment has changed drastically, and we're seeing the repercussions of that. However, I'm living right now in this time, and I don't want to experience the symptoms of the modern world. So how do I live a normal life? I go to
The,
work,
the,
I play with friends, I have a normal social life, but how do I like avoid the pitfalls of living in a modern time with all the chemicals in the upholstery and cars and food and how do I get a good sleeping cycle amongst the technology with phones and lights and so it's like that's where I'm coming from, is like, how do I take care of myself so that I can be healthy every single day, just like people were 100,000 years ago, when we had was stress from running from the tiger, and how do I secure food? You know?
we have been very brainwashed. If we don't discern the lies that we have learned as children from our parents. Now you had a great dad, so I mean,
I mean, I talk a lot, and people will say that, like, "Wow, your dad sounds really fucking cool," and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm kind of lucky." I always
but
say, like, I'm like second generation hippie. Like, you're first generation hippie, you had to fight all kind of nonsense bullshit, and like your generation really kind of like paved a pathway. And then I'm second generation, which means like I kind of absorbed all of this information, but I don't necessarily have like it feels like people are kind of coming around now. Like people actually want to know this stuff and are actually like interested in formulating a new lifestyle and a new reality for the planet. So I don't exactly have to like fight the common theme, even though it's still there.
Most of my friends that I grew up with have become what we detested when we were kids.
Mm. Yeah, well, humans are social. I remember I was at the jacuzzi like probably 11 years ago. No, like eight, probably like 10 years ago. I was at the jacuzzi and I was like in my early 20s and then talking about very like heated things like, you know, whatever politics and just like the way that the world is, you know, and I'm just like, oh, it doesn't need to be this way. And she goes, I hope you keep this because I used to be just like you. And then life happens. And I totally understood what she said. She had kids, she has family, she has job, she has responsibilities, she has all this kind of stuff. And eventually a lot of people, you just cave in. Like, and if you're not fortifying yourself, it's very easy to cave in to like what your friends are doing and what you're, you know, unless you've like absorbed knowledge and really absorbed it and really understand it and it's like becomes part of your being, then it's very easy for you to cave. You know, it's like as social beings, we want to fit in with one another. It's how we survive on this planet. You need a support group. And if you don't have that, you know, and if you're fighting against that, I mean, I've lost friends because I gave up Christianity, you know, and that was hard for me. Like I really thought that that was like the way to go. And then I had to critically think about it. And then I was like, okay, this isn't the way to go. But like my support system gone, you know. But like my desire to know what was true and what was real was stronger. And I don't know, maybe like you have to be courageous or something. But like same thing with food. It's like I changed my lifestyle from like eating McFlurries after going surfing all day and drinking beer, and you know, to like really taking good quality care of myself and making smoothies
So
and like
I made a before I made burgers, grass-fed burgers, and I made a pound of those today. And
yeah,
I put in, I mean, it was just onions and garlic and bell peppers and mango
delicious.
and then some Asian sauce. And and I had
You
those
don't want to
with,
tell me what's in that, do you? I'm just joking.
yeah, and and that was, and I had what I made spinach salad and green salads with cucumbers and bell peppers and yada yada. And
Cool.
then, I
Yeah.
mean, it was about 7:30 and I was hungry. I realized I needed to eat again. I would, if I hadn't had this consult with you, I would have probably gone to bed. But instead, I took some yellow fin tuna and I added mango, fresh mango, and apple, and some onion, and some garlic, and some lemon juice, and some herbs de Provence, and I think that was it. But I mean, the fresh mango and the apple, oh, and a bell pepper. Um,
Delicious.
oh my gosh!
Yeah.
And I had it in a with another bell pepper.
Nice.
So that was sort of my salad. I just kind of filled up I just used the bell pepper to eat the tuna with.
Yeah.
But I mean, how quick was that? And how quick was it to make
But you
my
know how to make things taste good. A lot of people, when they cook, they don't even know how to make something taste delicious. It's with herbs, it's with salt, it's with fat, it's with all these combinations and knowing the ratios. But for someone who like isn't a foodie,
so that's what I ate today. I ate grass-fed beef and
well,
yellowfin tuna.
I ate
And
fresh
the other
mahi
day,
belly.
yeah, and the other day, Patty and I made a swordfish, and we baked it, and we put a
Yeah.
tamponade olive on the top of it with orange juice, and we baked it, and it was a big 1.5-inch piece of swordfish. Patty, the other night she made a ribeye steak and a potato and a salad. We eat nothing but the best. I have my refrigerator is full of organic cherries, nectarines,
Oh my God, it's so
peaches.
good right now. I
Yeah,
texted all my friends, like all the summer fruit is in season right now. Go
ooh,
get it. Like
yeah.
it is. I had strawberries today. I had cherries, oranges. Yeah, I had,
The nectarines. Ay, ay,
yeah,
ay, ay, ay.
plums, nectarines, peaches. I went to the fish market yesterday after work, and I've been getting $3 a pound ahi belly. It's fresh ahi, $3 a pound. It's an offcut. It's it's better than the sashimi stuff. It's got so much more flavor. And I'm buying this, and it's like, oh yeah, you can have it, you know. And I'm like, so I bought $10 worth of that. I think I've eaten it like like yesterday and today for lunch, breakfast. I made it before I called you. I cooked some up with some okra that I went and picked from the yard, and then I had a bowl of cherries. And the cherries, like a few weeks ago, were not quite ready. Like now they're like just
I'm gonna
perfect.
go eat some as soon as we're done.
Yeah. I always
You
say
know,
like you can
and
eat
I,
like a peasant, and you can eat starvation food, and you can eat rice and bread and potatoes, and you could eat, eat like a peasant, and people are addicted to those kind of foods.
I had my probiotics today.
Or you can eat like royalty, and you can eat nothing but the best. And like life's short, like why spend time, why spend money not doing it right?
I've got organic hemp seeds. I've got organic hemp oil. I've got organic hemp protein. I made some buckwheat today with some mango and apple. Today was my mango and apple.
Nice.
You
Yeah.
know, tomorrow will be my cherry and nectarine.
Yeah.
The next day, so I rotate it, but I ate basically those burger patties all day long.
And you cooked
With
once, and you had
yeah,
food throughout the day.
yeah, yeah. And I was out gardening, working my butt off.
And then you take a break, and you don't have to cook up a meal. You don't have to run to McDonald's. You can just heat up or not heat up,
Yeah,
and be
yeah,
satisfied. Yeah.
yeah.
I know
So
it's like going old
Patty and
school.
I, we eat. We don't spare ourselves any pleasure.
Yeah.
The other day we ran to Palm Springs where it was 115, and we went to Trader Joe's and to Whole Foods. And Whole Foods had their ice cream on sale, so we found a cashew caramel ice cream, and we
Made it
bought that.
with
And
what?
then we bought
With
some
cow's
Ahi
milk,
tuna, cashew milk.
cashew milk.
And then no bad ingredients in it. And we got it for 35% off. They said,
There's
oh,
no
ice cream.
is there no sugar in there?
There was probably cane sugar.
Yeah.
But we bought some salmon, some smoked salmon. We got an avocado. We got some hummus. We got a rice cake, and we drove out of Palm Springs up to about a mile high, where it went from 115 down to about
65.
85 or something like that.
Oh.
And we put the rice cake with the hummus, with the avocado, with the tuna on it.
Oh.
And then we had the ice cream, which was still kind of icy at that point because we knew it was going to melt by the time I got home. But it was as good a dinner as any fancy seafood restaurant that
Or
you'd want to go to.
Yeah.
And we eat nothing but the best. We don't, it's always organic. It's always grass fed. It's, and I, and yet I see. So how hard is that?
I mean, I get it it's just a change of perspective and time. And like, when you learn about how important food is and how sacred it is to your life and what a major factor it plays, but
how fun it is.
But like you've purified yourself, and your filters are clear and clean. And for someone who doesn't know the difference and never wants to try, like I totally validate that too. If they want to go to the bar and drink a beer and order off the menu and just like people say they have an iron gut, and it's like, I believe you. Like you've tormented yourself your entire life to where your body's just like, all right, you're doing this to me again. Like I'm just going to take it. And it's like a really, unhealthy
Alzheimer's
relationship.
in the 60-year-olds,
Right.
50% of people in their 60s will have Alzheimer's in 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
I'm 70. I'm not going to have Alzheimer's.
So you don't have to live like that. And for people who want to, like whatever, you've made your bed, like sleep in it, like.
Yeah, if you have high blood pressure, if you have high cholesterol,
if you want to change, there is a way. If you want to experience a symptom-free life, like it is possible, and it's actually what's normal. and it's
Yeah.
not like it's not unattainable.
Even if you're pretty sick.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know, all these factors that we talked about for hormones. I mean, you get the gist of it, right?
Well,
If you have a hormonal problem,
yeah.
you got at least probably 10 things that are out of whack.
Yeah.
And if you want to, you know, like if you have an orchestra, you've got 50 instruments. If 10 of them are out of whack, it's not going to sound too good.
Right.
You know, so you've got to be a conductor and you know, or a composer.
And
You know, if
pull
you're a
everything
composer,
together.
you know, you got to know what you're doing. And that's basically what being a physician is being a conductor and being able to, you know, listen to the song that the person is singing and where they're out of tune, say,
And
hey.
then as a health consultant, I mean, you're really helping people fine tune themselves and become aware of this themselves. And that's
Yeah.
something hardly any doctors ever do.
What I wish is that all the time that I've spent teaching people, that those people, I try to teach them everything I know so that they don't need a doctor anymore. But unfortunately, what I see is people going back to where they were because it's the societal pressure is too much. The advertising is too much. You know, they got to go to the restaurants. They got to get the quick food.
In a way, like you have to kind of open up your consciousness to kind of make this transition, I guess. I don't know if it's absolutely necessary, but like you kind of got to get in tune with reality. And as long as you're living amongst the cultural insanity, then you really aren't safe, you know?
The great teachers have said 2 out of 100 people are conscious.
2 out of 100.
And that's generous.
Yeah.
So, you know, in general, you know, the people running around are not very disciplined. They don't meditate. If you're not meditating, if you haven't learned how to shut off your thinking,
Not even shut off, but just like like be disciplined in what you think about, you know? Like
yeah,
don't let your brain just run amok with like all kinds of nonsense and craziness.
but you have to stop your thinking to hear your divine guidance. Divine guidance doesn't come on if you're chattering. That's the whole purpose of meditation. I mean, it's only been taught for hundreds of thousands of years.
I think it's you know, humans are domesticated, and so there's symptoms of being domesticated, and meditation is kind of like a tool to like get over the hump of being a domesticated human. But as a natural human, I don't think you really need to do anything other than just like be in tune.
Well, if you're out in nature, you're meditating.
Yeah, you're just kind of.
But you can't let your mind just wander.
You can't let it wander, and you can't let it just.
Meditation's one of the neatest things I've ever done. I love it.
Yeah.
And it feeds me, and you know it guides me,
Yeah.
and you know I mean it's exciting.
But I mean, if you want to pursue a healthy life, there is something where you have to disconnect from the insanity that you see happening around you and realize like that is not normal. And as much as you know, sympathize with everyone around you and like try and understand why people are doing what they're doing, like you really do have to recognize like the way people are treating themselves is not normal. It's not okay. Like it's not how you have like optimum operation. And the proof is in the numbers of how many people get sick and how many people are unsatisfied, how many people are suicidal, like how many people are just not really clicking on all the gears. And I have a lot of health friends, you know, like I'm this is what I'm about. I'm about being healthy, and I can turn my brain off and like function with normal people. No big deal. I can relate with anyone with however they want to relate with. But when it really comes down to like what I'm about, it is like it's being optimal. It's like how do I, but without being like only about that, you know, like I still just want to be a shithead sometimes too. But like I know kind of the areas in which I can dabble in and the areas that I have to be strict in. And yeah, even my health conscious friends are not like they're not all the way there, you know, like there's pieces in there, and that's kind of what these videos are for, and that's what like the documentary is for, is to like showcase like, look, if you want to do this, this is like the all out formula. This is how you really do it, and just showcasing what a day in the life, what if, how do you take a cancer patient, someone who's developed cancer, and how do you heal them in this period of time? And it's like, and if you, even if you don't have cancer, how do you just live healthy? Like, it's the same formula.
PMS is an opportunity.
Yes.
It's like saying, hey.
But see, society thinks that it's normal. Like PMS and menstrual cramps and migraines, like, oh, just give me chocolate and let me just pout and like give me a hot pack, and then you just bear with it or whatever.
Any kind of a crisis is an opportunity.
Totally.
And so if you have a problem, then the problem comes with a solution. Every problem comes with a solution. And you have to be perceptive enough to see what the solution is.
One of my favorite things was like,
I'm sad. We maybe should do this talk again, because the Dutch test, together with the food sensitivity test, together with the heavy metals test, together with the blood chemistry, it's a magnificent tool. That really lets you solve really, really tough problems that are not being really looked at properly. And so people continue to just get worse and worse until they get this bad disease that kills them. And there's too many lemmings falling off the cliff. And with the tools that are now at our disposal, my gosh.
I know, it's so neat. Like, the modern world, like, we have access to all of these tools that that weren't available. We can share information instantaneously. We can look at all these chemistries. I mean, we can really dial ourselves in really well. I mean, we can send people to space. I mean, God damn it. Like, there's no reason why we can't make paradise on Earth. There's no reason why.
Well, let's see. I'd still like to get some questions, because I mean, we could do case studies and we could do some tests, and then we could show what the tests actually, their practicality, how they apply to address a person's complaint.
Yeah.
So, we need some guinea pigs.
Yeah, I mean, we'll make like a master program or whatever, a master documentary. But it's just like, it all boils down to the same stuff. It's always daily self-care, how you eat, how you sleep, how you exercise, how you think. And those are accumulated.
But there are knots that get tied that, unless you know how to untie them, they'll remain knots unless you really clear them out. I did a seminar on, this seminar was on cycling hormones. I did a seminar on male hormones this month, which was fabulous. Turns out that men have probably just as much issues as women. Really? And then I did a seminar on menopausal.
What is it when men are going bald? What is that about?
It's usually excessive testosterone.
Yeah. What is it? Stress related? Like, what is it?
Sure. It's all the things we just talked about.
I know, but like, I want you to just like pinpoint it.
Well, you have to have the tests, because every test we're all different.
Generalize it.
We're not all the same.
Okay, what about, like, I've read that like hair is kind of a non-necessary thing for the human body. Like, there's tribes in Africa where like one tribe drinks the blood of the cows that they herd, and they're just tall and robust and have lots of hair and just look fucking healthy. And then there's another tribe with the same genetics that they're still bush people, and they eat bugs, and like they don't have access to this nutrient dense cow's blood, and their hair is like pretty sparse and like doesn't grow in as much, and they're a couple inches shorter, and they're just not as robust. So like, does hair, obviously hair and nails has to do with nutrition as well, but like balding specifically, like, to me, it looks like stress and malnourishment is why like someone would go bald, but it's like, it's labeled as genetic. So what's going on?
Read The Biology of Belief.
All right. I mean, that's That's
Genetics is
a learned
is a,
program, but like
is a
epigenetics. Okay,
wild goose chase.
sure. But like, so a lot of people like in the guy's realm of hormones, like I mean, I'm like 30 now and I have shown no signs of ever losing any hair ever, but I've also not drank alcohol and I don't live a stressed out life. I'm not stressed about money or any of that
You
kind of,
exercise.
I get good rest. And so like, I know that if I didn't take care of myself, like I'd be a completely different like organism, with like different traits showing themselves.
Yeah, you'd be a different species
Yeah.
for
So,
sure.
but yeah, I mean,
You would be the opposite of evolution. You would be a devolution.
yeah, it would be default. I feel like every year I'm getting, better and more robust and more strong and more capable and like more centered as I apply all these things, which is like really, it makes me excited to get older. It makes me like, like very, like I have no symptoms. I mean, except for injuries from me just like being stupid and putting myself and like overworking myself. But
It's pretty neat being 70.
mm,
And it's not something that a 35-year-old can even imagine.
yeah, but yeah,
But
but
a lot of the 35-year-olds, they think they know it all, and
well, you're kind of
they
like
think
in
that
your prime essentially, where you're like you've learned how to control all the controls and you're like flying. Or like another analogy I use is like the training wheels are off, like you're doing what you want to do.
not from my 70-year-old perspective. When I look at 35-year-olds, I see a lot of immaturity,
Sure.
and I see a lack of wisdom,
Yeah.
and I see a lack of mastery.
Yeah, for sure.
And so it's but from you guys' perspective, you see, but a lot of
Well, you lose a
70-year
little bit of capabilities, like in
a
that kind
lot
of,
of 70-year-olds do act like they're in fifth grade, and a
well,
lot of adults do.
yeah, I
But
mean,
there is value in aging,
yeah.
and
If
it's
you
precious.
if
It's
you took care of
precious.
yourself, if you didn't, by the time you hit 30, you're falling apart and you're stressing, and you're tired, and you have kids and they're just wearing you out. And then, you're 40 or 50, you're worried about retirement, and then you're, 60. It's like the modern human in the modern world is just seems like they're always trying to chase this carrot in front of them, and like they're not fortifying themselves to ever get it, like,
Unfortunately, it's the 2 out of 100.
and that's why it's like empowering people with this kind of information is very, it's very valuable. It's like, hey, look, you can live a really fulfilling life while doing all the things.
But they gotta want it. They
Well,
really gotta want it.
I think
I
that's,
mean, I get
yeah.
up and read. I'm reading The Evolution of Human Thought right
I
now.
mean, people are listening to podcasts, people are reading, it's just getting people to want the right information. I mean, people are hungry for it. Like we see what your generation did and all the pitfalls you guys made and how you guys are suffering now. Like people's parents are not healthy, and this generation does click. We have the power of the internet. We are sharing information with one another. It's just, what information are we actually getting out there? Is it valuable? Is it real? Is it potent? And for the most part, the information that I see being passed around as far as health is concerned is very superficial. And that's why, like, knowing what I know through you, it's worrisome. It's like, okay, people want to know, people are interested, but they're being misguided, And so it's like, it's not that there's a lack of want, it's just there's a lack of like real deep information. And I mean, that could go with any subject, and if you dig deep enough, but it's just making the information accessible, like people have been grocery shopping forever, but Amazon just made it really fucking easy to shop. So it's like people want to do it. It's just, how accessible is it? How easy is it to attain? To get. It's not easy to attain, but
what should we do next? What should we talk about next?
I don't know.
Think about it.
I
Let me
really don't
know.
know. I mean, every conversation is always about the same thing because it's the foundation. But it'd be cool to like really dig deep, like tonight with hormones. It'd be really cool to like dig deep and just get nitty gritty and like, like you and I just having a conversation without even really trying to explain, but just like passing information, having a conversation, like going deeper, not even really necessarily following like going off on tangents. You know what I mean? Like if we could just go get into the nitty gritty of things and be like, oh, and then this, and like divulge all the, like an encyclopedia, like divulge all the information that we know about a topic. I think that would be a lot of fun. And we'd get somewhere like both of us would be like, oh, whoa, we went somewhere new. I think those are always really exciting conversations. But it would just be all over the board. Of course, it's always talking about the same thing, but I mean, what is it that you've been like really interested in recently? Like as far as like your personal, um, like what's,
Well, I've got a really tough patient right now in Amsterdam that's having horrible migraines.
mm-hmm,
And she's been sick a long time. She's pretty young,
mm-hmm,
but, she's gone to dozens of doctors, and, they found a cyst on her pineal.
mm,
And she's got vision problems, but she's had really horrible gut problems, which are much, much better. And we did the food test. She's been real meticulous about that for a couple of years. But, I was suggesting this hormone, and she said, well, I don't really have many of those symptoms. And I'm excited because I've learned so much in the last month about, getting back to her and saying, look, there's a lot about these migraines that are locked up in these tests and in this analysis that, I think will really, really benefit you. So that's, I mean, because I studied hormones 20 years ago, I did hundreds and hundreds of consults about interpreting hormone panels, and I've kept doing it. And what I've learned in the last month with these seminars from the Precision Analytical, they've really evolved, and it's magnificent.
yeah, that's cool.
So I'm stoked about
Well,
that.
let's do a talk like we do when there isn't a recording going on. And literally it's just like you talking, me and interrupting you a lot and just kind of like, what do you mean? What is that? What is that? And so it's like, it's not necessarily a story. It's like, let's just go deep. And
Okay.
that's my favorite way to converse, honestly. And
All right. Well, I'm up for that. That's
yeah, that'd be fun.
spontaneous. We can talk about trees.
Yeah. I started reading.
Have you read any of that?
Just the first 12 pages. Yeah. It's good. I read the jacket. Of course, you know me, I read everything that is on the book. I mean, I will absorb everything. But yeah, I started. It seems like it's
a full meal.
It's an yeah, a
You should
collection
have
of
gotten your
minds.
birthday presents today, so ask your neighbors.
Okay.
They said it arrived today.
Thanks for staying up late and hanging out and talking.
Let me know you got your birthday present, because it was supposed to arrive today.
Okay. Yeah, I will. I'll see if it's around. I gotta go surf. There's a little bit of waves because there's a hurricane coming, so there's a little.
I've heard about that.
Longboard. Yeah, it's not too
It's
good.
still daytime there?
7:00. Yeah, it's not gonna be dark till 8 or something.
All
I
right,
woke up this morning. I went on a run. I worked all day. Came home, made some food real quick. Hung out with you. Now I'm gonna go play again and probably sleep really good, hopefully.
I'm gonna go have some cherries and some pine nuts.
Nice.
Oh boy.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, this was amazing. I'll let you know about the birthday present. And thanks for being amazing and kicking ass. And
did anybody listen to the digestive thing?
60 people in a week.
Did you get any feedback?
Not really. We're just gonna keep on making these things, and then yeah, we'll just, I mean, obviously, yeah, people I'm messaging people. But yeah, I haven't really, I guess there's people I need to follow through with.
Okay. Well, next time we'll just kind of go with your questions.
Yeah, let's just like have a full on shotgun session where it's just like,
Okay.
I think that'd be fun to kind of show like our way of communicating. I think is very like open and free flowing, and you know what I mean? Like we can get really deep really well without anyone like being offended that they weren't able to like say what they wanted to say. It's like, okay, that idea is done. Let's keep going deeper and deeper. It's fun.
Fun.
There's no one else that I'm able to do that with, you know, like,
Tijuana dinner conversations.
yeah, exactly.
Poor Kai.
He reached out to me
Remember
this week. He
remember
texted
when
me.
he was under the table?
Yeah. He
He
was,
just
he
couldn't
was,
handle it.
yeah, he was freaking out. You know, it's
That
fun.
was so cute.
I've done this with a few friends where they come and stay with me for a week and they detox really hard. I mean, I went on a snowboard trip to Mammoth with two people, and I cooked all the food. I prepared all the meals. I took a cold shower in the morning. We had breakfast. We came back. I had a cold shower in the middle of the day. I had dinner. We went jacuzzi, cold shower at night. We were there for 7 days. I was
Hitting the
high
slopes.
I
Hitting the
was
slopes.
snowboarding 8 hours a day. I was high as a kite. I was doing everything fucking perfectly. And they were detoxing hard, having headaches and constipation, and like they were not feeling amazing. And I'm like, oh God, you can't exactly do that.
That's interesting.
And I think that was the case with Kai too. I mean, he was constipated. Um, Pretty much anyone, like it's the first time that people are actually taking really immaculate care of themselves, and so the body's like, you mean I don't have to like harden myself? I can actually like let go and breathe and like actually like let go of all this shit I've been holding. So it's kind of it takes weeks, you know, to detox. But Kai reached out to me because he came and stayed with me a couple of years ago when he came back from a 4 month trip to New Zealand, and he stayed with me for 4 days or something, and we just had great times. I mean, it was like no time had passed, you know. It was like good best friend vibes.
Yeah, he's fun.
He is so
He's
much
fun.
fun. And so he
Yeah.
he texted me. He's like, yeah, I just want to like a few people have kind of reached out with me. I've been like a little bit more like I don't give a shit on social media, which is kind of like nice in a way because a lot of people like really care how people think of them on social media. And so I think that people are like, oh, Stuart's like feeling great. So I want to talk to him right now, see how he's doing. So
Nice.
it's fun. But
Well, happy birthday almost.
yeah, when is it? Soon, huh? It's in like 2 weeks.
Couple weeks. Yeah.
I know every weekend.
You probably won't open up your present till then, right?
Oh no. Yeah, well, but so like every weekend since the summer started, there has been a party to go to. Every single weekend, I've been just. I think a combination of coronavirus and just it's summer, so people want to get together. But last week I went to dinner. I went to people's houses for dinner 4 nights out of 5, and I'm going to
Wow.
work too. But like I went to this hunter gathering party where they killed a deer and like roasted it whole, like slow cooked it whole on the smoker, and then went to it. Like I just went to dinner party after dinner party after dinner party, and yeah, I love doing that. I'm a highly social animal, but I also really like not like I like coming home at 6 and like not leaving and like cooking a really slow meal and like reading a book and then like dozing off at like 9:30 and doing that for a week. And that's when I feel my best, honestly. And I don't know, there's a healthy balance between like maintaining your friendships and maintaining your sanity. But like I'm doing pretty good. But like I want to get back into the cocoon, and that's why we're going to do these cancer clinics. It's like it's an opportunity to like go back into 100%, you know, and that to me it feels better than like anything that I'm trying to do on the outs, you know, like anything I'm trying to achieve by hanging out and socializing and stuff. I it happens without doing any of that, you know.
That is a nice perspective that when we were in Tijuana, we were living the healing.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it happened to you.
Exactly.
And so, you know, that's integrity.
Well, you know,
Because
when you're healing someone else, you also get to experience the, you know, the healing properties. I read another good thing. It's like, don't expect the people who are healing you to be healed. Like they're still going through their stuff, you know. It's like, I think a lot of times I notice when I'm sharing this information, people will judge you based on the things that you're saying. It's like, hey, this is information. we're all human, we're all trying our best. But like people, when you, I early in my 20s talking about spiritual stuff, you know, it's like, oh well, you're like not like this. I'm like, I'm just like talking about information in hopes that it could inspire you. It doesn't mean that I am this way, you know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
there's a
Mhm.
weird judgment thing that people do to one another when it
Mhm.
comes to like living your best life or like trying your hardest. It's just like, I notice it when I'm running in the morning. I love it when I don't make eye contact with anyone. I'm just in my head. I'm not interacting because, you know, you're running on the beach in the morning and people are like, oh, whoa, who's this? Like, why? You know what I mean? Like they judge themselves based on what this other human is. I wish you know, I just know that that's like the thought, not even like, I don't even know that's what they're thinking, but you can just tell, like some people are like, hey, good morning, stoked. And some people are just like, uh, and so I noticed like if I go really early, then no one's there and I feel great. And like my thought process is clear and clean and like so great. Or if I'm running and
Does
like
it feel like Todos Santos?
this morning was gorgeous. Yeah. I mean,
But
every
you remember
morning,
how pristine Todos Santos felt?
I mean, this stretch of beach. I mean, it's exciting for a lot of reasons. The sand is gorgeous. The water's gorgeous. The mountains in the background are iconic. But also, I mean, this is where the playground is coming up here in a few months. I mean, this is where the biggest waves ever that I've surfed are. And so it's kind of just fun to be around that playground. It's like
Mhm.
being at an Olympic swimming pool or something. You're like, okay, this is like the top.
I
So
was impressed. It's very, very beautiful where you are.
yeah, I mean, if you followed me on Instagram, you'd kind of know a lot more of what I was up to and doing. On Facebook, I don't really like Facebook. It's just a way to like share information. But on Instagram, it's more of like your life, day to day, and you kind of like inspire one another through like memes and stories and just see what your friends are up to, and then share music and all that kind of stuff. It's fun. Um, Yeah, I live in an idyllic place. I'm really lucky, and I say that every single day. And but I'm willing to give it up. I'm willing to like give up my lifestyle to do something even better, um, and help people. Like I figured my shit out, so that's cool. But like it'd be fun to help other people figure their shit out and live their best life. I mean, for ourselves, but for the planet's sake too. I mean, we got to clean up our act. If we don't, like, we're done. So it's just like all hands on deck. Like give it your all, like give what you can, you know, put your 2 cents in and see if we can all kind of make sense of what's been going on. So, and it's our reality. If we don't do it, then it's not going to happen. I mean, if we don't like take action and become in charge of our lives and help one another, I mean, it takes a village to run this world.
Look what they're doing in Portland.
Yeah, I know. It's impressive. I follow a few people, and last night one of them was live, and so I watched their live feed, and they're literally at war with like these federal agents. And to me, it's like insane, but it's not without reason. Like there's huge validity behind what they're doing, and if you watch the media, if you're away from it, then it's like easy for you to be like, oh, they shouldn't be behaving that way. But if you're like there and you're feeling it and you're seeing it, it's like this is what needs to happen in order to fix what's going on. And if we don't meet this kind of behavior with this intensity, then it's just going to keep persisting. So it's cool to like to root for them. I mean, obviously they're putting
Yeah,
themselves in harm's way too. So it's like,
yeah, it's happening.
but I mean,
And
Oregon
it,
was like the only white state, right? I mean, they were like the first state to be like whites only. And so it's kind of ironic. I mean, you go outside of Portland and it's fucking racist and like weird bubba dudes. And then you go into Portland and it's like the most progressive city. And so I put a post on Instagram recently where it was like, it's funny how radicalism breeds more radicalism, you know? And as the pendulum swings, if you're radical like this and you're around radical people that are fucking radical like this, the tendency is to become radical like this. And so it's like that polarity, that balance that happens. It's like it's it's a weird thing that happens in the universe, but like
yeah,
when you have a fucking pressure on this side, you have equal pressure on this side. So Portland is kind of a special like that because I mean it's a cool place. I mean I spent 6 months there and having, you know, a family that lives there, I've got to experience it. Um, So it's a rad happening as far as society goes. It's also confusing because it's very like, it's progressive. It's like, is this really what we should be doing? But yeah, it needs to happen. I think humans are just liberating themselves, and that's the coolest thing. It's like humans finally are realizing through the internet, through spirituality, that like we are not the sum of our culture. Like we are ourselves. And as much as you try and make people programs of America or programs of Canada or programs of, it's like humans are just freaking are humans, and we need to evolve and understand that. And it's like government isn't going to solve all your problems. They're supposed to there to help to organize everything and make things efficient for the people. But when they're out there making all the rules and the people are, that's when, yeah, people need to stand up and revolt. And thank God, I mean, I've been waiting 10 years for people to like freaking revolt against the tyranny of America. And it took Donald Trump just being a fucking blatant asshole for it to kind of happen. Obviously there's people on both sides with that as far as what Donald Trump's up to, but like he's revealing, whereas like Obama and all these other politicians are very polished and like just kind of keep the people docile and, oh, it's okay, like they're very diplomatic. But Trump is just blatantly just like a dumbass, and so it makes everyone go like, whoa, it's really out of control now, we gotta step up.
I hope so.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, it's fun. I remember when I first became like woke or whatever, before when I first started questioning everything, and I was really depressed about it because it felt like nobody else was really like questioning everything, and and no one really wanted to talk about anything, and no one was really interested. And now, 10 years later, people are really see through the holes, and environmentally, politically, you know I think the internet is really the thing. The internet has made everything available, everyone's connected, there isn't any enemy. Like maybe somebody's government is messed up, it doesn't mean the people deserve to die, like you know what I mean, like going to war with a country of innocent people that are just living their lives just like you are because their leader, like, come on. Like people, and the internet has allowed us to see that. Like you can watch documentaries and videos, and you can follow people online that live all over the world and see they're just like you. It's, and so the chess game has been revealed. And but yeah, I don't know if people are really able to like change their internal dialogue about it. I think people's identity is kind of wrapped up in their beliefs. So for someone to recognize that their beliefs are bogus, it kind of throws people maybe in a place of like not
There's a
really.
lot of propaganda,
Yeah, but I
and,
mean,
and propaganda is subtle and it's effective.
yeah,
So there's a lot of misinformation, and it's not easy to discern when you're programmed.
yeah,
And
yeah. I know. I see a lot of my friends are finally kind of waking up to what's going on in the world, and they're sharing a lot of information, but it's not. It's like whack information. It's like it's. I mean, the amount of times I've had to hear about like reptilians like running the government, I'm just like, okay, like I don't know if that's quite what's going on, but like, yes, you should question these people, but like, are
David
they,
Icke,
yeah, like,
David
are they
Icke.
reptilians, or are they just like elitists without empathy? Like, are they really like from shape shifting, or are they just like have so much goddamn money and power that like they've lost their humanity? So like, I don't know, like there's a,
David Icke. I can't follow.
I mean, I try, me, like I really try and like absorb what is being presented, and it
I
doesn't make
yeah.
sense. It hasn't been a clear picture, it hasn't been presented to me at least. But maybe I'm just not. I have a lot of friends, I'm open-minded, so people send me stuff, and like I talk to people, and I'm like, yeah, but like maybe it's not so extreme like you're saying it is. Like maybe like we should just kind of get back into like what the parameter of reality is, rather than like trying to make up all these crazy stories to like to explain our existence. So I mean, but I'm nice about it, and I really want to know where people are at. Unless if people know that you care about them, then they're more receptive to having an open conversation. So as long as you're like, no, you're wrong, then they're not even gonna like, they're not gonna text me anymore. So That's, and I want to know what the crazy things that people are thinking. But yeah, that's maybe too revealing about my inner workings of how I interact with people. But yeah.
I might have to check out Instagram. I'm over Facebook. I don't look at that anymore. And
Yeah,
I never did. I never did post. I looked at an old friend of mine that I went to high school.
yeah.
He's such an unrepentant asshole. It's just unbelievable. And that's the sad thing is so many of my old friends
Yeah.
can't relate to.
I remember there was a period when I was in my early 20s and I came up to your house and I was going through something and I had to, there was like a reset that I had to do. And it was like, you're like, I don't know what it was, but I was being, something along those lines, like an unrepentant asshole, but it's not, it's something else. It was just like an arrogant, like where you just don't even see that you're being bogus. And you're just like so oblivious to the fact that you're the one that's actually being a fucking idiot. And I forget the term or whatever that it's used, but I remember doing that was really clarifying. Like it was very helpful to like realize like, look, like you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And I'd say that to myself. And that was a very empowering situation because before it's like people try so hard to like know everything and like come off as like, oh yeah, I fucking know what I'm talking about. And it's like, I'm important. And it's like, no, you're grasping for air. And when you can like humble yourself and be like, I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, but let's come from that space rather than like this arrogant asshole space. And it's like, that's how you get somewhere. And I remember that was a turning point for me because I think I was pretty like hot-headed and also moving here in Hawaii, like the general mode is like of love and humility. And that's kind of, you can walk around like you're the shit, but you stink and everyone sees it. Like everyone sees that you think you're the shit. It's a small place and it's like you kind of smell because like everyone here is amazing. And it's like you don't walk around like an arrogant asshole. And in California, everyone walks around like an arrogant asshole. And so that's how you behave. And like you're very egocentric and you don't participate in one another's emotions. And here it's like you realize like how you interact with people affects them. And so that was really
Wow.
cool to like,
That's wonderful.
I moved here to kind of heal for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I knew I needed some grounding or whatever, but yeah, so that was, I forget the words. It'd be fun to kind of remember it. I remember it was like a tough night and I was like smoking cigarettes and like starting this business and I was like so like cocky and just just like way too just fucking like thinking that. And then I got humbled pretty hard and it was good. It was like really nice. And I see that with friends too that are like doing their own thing and they're becoming successful. They kind of get like really annoyingly like cocky about it, like think like they can. And it's like, yes, you can, but like also just like be chill about it because like, but you get your first taste of success and then you think like, I'm unstoppable. But it's like, no, like just stay humble, just be chill about it. Like if any, like all of us are just trying to make the world a better place. I mean, hopefully that's what you're trying to do. Just like make the world better with what you're bringing to the table. And for me, like I'm friends with a lot of like purely positive people. And I find it kind of disgusting and atrocious because that's not how life is. Like life is going to throw you hardships and it's okay to like understand that it's fucking confusing and annoying and like difficult. And you don't always have to like, I'm fine. And that was a problem for me my whole life. It was like, I'm okay. I got this. I handle this. And in all actuality, there's a lot of relief in just coming off as like, you know what? Like, yeah, I've had my ass handed to me. Like this fucking is gnarly. And so in a way, I'm like a thorn in those guys' side, even though they're friends with me, because I will talk about things critically and negatively and like actually be like, no, well, that's actually not true. And I do it in a nice way, but like, it doesn't exactly click with this new age Louise Hay, like everything positivity, you manifest everything. It's like, yes, you do, but you don't have to make it a sickness. Like you can be balanced. So, but yeah, I mean, if you're feeling a certain way, feel it and then let it go. You know, you don't have to like harbor it. You don't have to keep it. But a lot of people try and avoid those things. It's like called spiritual bypassing or something. So anyways, I don't know. We're just ranting now.
I like where you're at.
Yeah.
It's
Thanks.
wonderful. Love you a lot.
I love you too, Dad. Thanks.
Okay.
Fun times.
Okay.
Love you.
Send me a picture.
All right, I will. I gotta get out in the water. Trevor's waiting.
Okay. Say hi to Trevor.
Okay, well.